Hey guys, what's up? It's your boy T for 365 Horror, and this is a horror movie discovery channel. I am just here to put as many horror movies on your watch list as possible. And in today's video, we are going to be looking at 12 brand new releases for you guys to watch and stream today. So let's get into it right now. Now we are going to get into the video, but before we do, I've got to remind you guys to please like and subscribe if you like this content. Also, this video is best watched with the movie tracker. I like to use Letterboxd. It's just the easiest way to keep track of the movies that you've seen and want to see. I also wanted to touch on the availability of these releases, as a lot of these movies just came out yesterday. I have personally verified with each site that these movies are available. So if you're not seeing them, then some of the reasons could be that you're region locked. Not all of these movies are immediately available in Canada. Or if you are using alternative media sites, the free stuff, sometimes these movies again are brand new, so they don't show up for a couple days. And lastly, these are just a preview. Huh? What's that? That they don't really care that it's a preview? They're still going to leave in the comments that he doesn't even watch the movies? Why don't they care that it's just a preview? These are not reviews and recommendations. If you did want some reviews and recommendations, then I suggest you watch my Every Movie I Watched in a Month series, my You Should Watch series, or any of my movie list series. This is just a little something for the diehards like me that are always looking for something new to watch. And with that, let's get right into the video. Now, before we get to today's video, there is one little conversation topic that I did want to get into, and it basically covers the fact of personal preference. Just once again, sometimes in the comments, I notice that some people will be like, why didn't you choose this movie? I think the comment exactly was something about one of the movies and how it was clearly the best, and how it didn't add up that I didn't pick it as one of the best. So I just wanted to preface and let you guys know that once again, these 7 or 8 of today's movies came out yesterday. I did not have enough time to watch them all. And generally when I make the picks, I'm just making picks based on what I think looks good and what I'll probably watch first. Now, even if I did see the movie mentioned and I didn't think it was the best, that isn't wrong. Nobody is ever wrong. Everybody has their own preference. Everybody has their own trigger points. Everybody has what they think is scary. So sometimes you got to realize that people have preferences, and the movies that you think are the best aren't always just objectively the best. Art is subjective. And that's another thing. Horror movies are movies, so they are art. So when I hear somebody say, why are you talking about this artsy nonsense? These clearly aren't horror movies. I think that's ridiculous, because that's just what you think a horror movie is. Maybe you only like slashers, but I might like Midsommar. I might like Hereditary. That doesn't make them not horrors because you don't like them. It just makes them horror movies that you didn't prefer. But enough rambling from me. I know that was probably way longer than I really meant it to be, and I'll probably cut it down quite a bit, but let's just get right into some new movies. So the first movie we're going to take a look at this week is a drama horror thriller called The Forest Hills, and this movie is available on VOD Digital.
Shed human skin!
Haunted by nightmares, Rico descends into madness in the Catskill Mountains. It is directed by Scott Goldberg. After watching the trailer for Forest Hills, I found that this looked just like a little bit of a meh werewolf movie. Now, even though you have Shelley Duvall, rest in peace, and you have Edward Furlong, I just found that I don't know if it was the dialogue, but something just didn't sit extremely well with me, and I found even their performances just weren't the greatest. Now, the film seemed shot okay, but unfortunately the acting, it just was a little bit mid. The werewolf looked meh, and even some of the transformation scenes looked kind of meh as well. Now, on the bright side, the movie did look like it had some blood and gore in it, but just some of the shock reactions and some of the fear reactions, they just looked mid. Now, the premise on this one didn't look too bad. The story of a guy who looks like he's in the forest taking drugs to suppress being a werewolf, perhaps? But it wasn't something that I really thought was overly unique or struck me as something that was super original. All in all, I've said it in the past that I feel that werewolf movies are just kind of hard. It's hard to really produce a good one, and I do feel like this one is a miss. Unless you guys really tell me differently, I may have to skip The Forest Hills on my watch list.
Every day, I try to do my best. I do. And I know that you do too. I'm constantly struggling.
Next movie we're going to take a look at is a comedy horror thriller called Haunt Season, and this movie's available on VOD Digital.
Are you ready to die?
A masked maniac targets cast members at a suburban Halloween haunt attraction, turning their staged injuries into gruesome real-life horrors. As the terror escalates, the lines between performance and reality blur. It is directed by Jake Jarvie. Okay, so after watching the trailer for Haunt Season, this looks like a decent to good circle of friends slasher type film. Now, I know from the story premise that the cast of this haunted house, they may not exactly be friends, but when you have a bunch of coworkers together vibing with different personalities and different character archetypes, I still feel like we get that circle of friends vibe. Now, the acting that we see in the trailer looks decent, and I did like the premise. Some of the comedic stuff in the trailer actually got a smirk from me, and it actually seemed like the comedy was going to be more witty than slapstick. Now, the haunted house setting gives us a good opportunity for some jump scares, but just from what I saw, I don't know if we're going to get any long-lasting creeps out of this one. From what I've seen, it does look like it has good gore and a great variety of kills. Now, I did like the we're just out of work drama kids working at a haunted house angle, and I think it gives us a good opportunity for some good self-deprecating humor and laughs. Overall, Haunt Season does interest me a bit and will get a regular to higher spot on my watch list.
How long can you scream without needing like a break or something?
Probably a few hours.
Next movie we're going to take a look at is a comedy horror called Haunted Ulster Live, and this one's available on VOD Digital.
Man was found in Montgomery Street in Belfast city centre. The scene is still cordoned off.
On Halloween night, Jerry Burns teams up with popular children's presenter Michelle Kelly to investigate poltergeist activity in a haunted house in Belfast. It is directed by Dominic O'Neill. Okay, so after watching the trailer for Haunted Ulster Live, this one looks like a bit of a meh found footage horror movie. Now, it does seem like we get some supernatural haunted activity in the locations that they're observing, so we could get some good creeps and scares. Now, there wasn't any real gore in the trailer, so I don't think we're going to see anything of significance there. And I just found that the character acting tended to be subpar as well. Now, the story wasn't bad, even though it was nothing original, but from how little we saw in the trailer, I'm just afraid that this is going to become another uneventful found footage until the last 15 minutes. And I find, unfortunately, the 2-hour buildup for 15 minutes of payoff, I'm just not that into anymore. Now, I find that I still have this weird soft spot for found footage, and I do want to see them all because when you find a good one, it's really great. So I am going to throw Haunted Ulster on, but it is going to get a little bit of a lower spot on my watch list.
We now have a very special live broadcast for Halloween. Spooky goings on in a Belfast home. This is Haunted Ulster Live. Viewer discretion is advised.
Next movie we're going to take a look at is a comedy fantasy horror called Beetlejuice Beetlejuice, and this movie's available on VOD Digital.
It's time.
After a family tragedy, 3 generations of the Dietz family return home to Winter River. Still haunted by Beetlejuice, Lydia's life is turned upside down when her teenage daughter, Astrid, accidentally opens a portal to the afterlife. It is directed by Tim Burton. Okay, so after watching the trailer for Beetlejuice, this looks like an okay supernatural comedy horror. Now, even with my bias because I was a really big Beetlejuice fan in my younger years, I still for some reason am not 100% motivated to see this one. Now, it's not that I think the movie looks overly bad. I actually think it looks pretty decent for the zany type comedy horror that it is. Now, honestly, after watching the trailer for this one, I don't think we should really expect any real creeps and scares, other than maybe like a jump scare or two here and there. Now, I could see there's some gore in it because there's a point where he like lifts up his shirt and his guts fall out, but it didn't exactly look like disgustingly real, so I think whatever gore we do get is definitely going to be some comedy gore. Now, I did like the throwback kind of original cast to this one, and I do think that it's going to help me with the nostalgia of enjoying this film. Now, the movie stars Michael Keaton, Winona Ryder, Catherine O'Hara, so I'm sure we're going to see something that's acted well. The story doesn't exactly look riveting, but at least the effects looked pretty good. Now overall, I think this movie would be great for like a light, nostalgic throwback watch, but I'm not really expecting anything as grand as spiriting me back to my youth. I could see this movie getting thrown on a Sunday afternoon, especially for nostalgia, so it's gonna get a regular spot on my watch list.
There will only be one rule in this place. Do not enter the attic.
Lydia. The juice is loose.
Next, we're going to take a look at an action horror called Hellboy, The Crooked Man, and this movie's available on VOD Digital. Hellboy and a rookie BPRD agent in the 1950s are sent to the Appalachians, where they discover a remote community dominated by witches and led by the sinister local demon, the Crooked Man. It is directed by Brian Taylor. Okay, so after watching the trailer for Hellboy, this looks like a decent to good action horror. Now, I've never really been a huge Hellboy fan, even though I'm a really big comic nerd, and I've never really gotten into the films, but this one actually looks pretty decent. Now, even though you probably won't get a ton of creeps and scares in an action horror, at least the main antagonist, the Crooked Man, he looked pretty creepy. I've always kind of come to love that ticky movement, and even in the trailer, one of the ways he like turns his head and it's just really neck-breakingly, it definitely was creepy for sure. Now, action horrors tend to be bloody and violent with good gore, so I'm sure we're going to get something decent there. Now, I did like the action from what I saw, and I thought that the movie had some really good dark imagery, and overall I appreciated that they decided to take that dark of a tone. Now, I did like the premise for the film, and even though I didn't feel like it was entirely unique, I still felt drawn in by a pretty brutal and creepy antagonist. Now, honestly, of all the films, this is the first Hellboy that I'm actually interested to watch, and who knows, maybe if it's good enough, it'll actually make me catch up and watch the rest of the Hellboy films. Because I have heard that they were actually good. Hellboy the Crooked Man actually interested me and is going to get a regular spot on my watch list.
I heard tales about him all my life. Most just called him the Crooked Man.
Next movie we're going to take a look at is a straight horror called Mr. Crocket, and this movie's available on Hulu. A mother embarks on a peerless quest to rescue her son from a demonic children's show host who is kidnapping kids. It is directed by Brandon Espy. Okay, so after watching the trailer for Mr. Crocket, this movie looks like a pretty good supernatural horror. Now, first off, as always with black films, I've got to go partially boomer, but the honest truth is I do enjoy seeing black films that aren't kind of like drowning in black suffrage or really heavy-handed with those kind of themes. If you make it so the movie isn't like a rehash or rebrand, and you give us just some original characters that we can like maybe latch on to, it always makes me that much more interested. Now, when it came to the creeps and scares in Mr. Crocket, I did think that they looked kind of light, but at least they did attempt to make Mr. Crocket look and act pretty creepy. Now, even though the gore looks light, I mean, like I said, not all movies have to have gore. I just say it because if you are a gore hound, then you might want to know whether or not it looked gory, but even though the gore looks light, I do like this kind of harkening back to like my childhood and watching shows like Mr. Rogers or some of these kind of more variety shows. That's what Mr. Crocket reminds me of. And being an only child, there was plenty of times that I was kind of left in a room with the TV, and unfortunately, because both my parents worked and I was a latchkey kid, sometimes the TV did kind of raise me. Now, I did like what I saw from the cast of Mr. Crocket, and I did find that the movie looked like it was acted well. Overall, Mr. Crocket doesn't look too bad, and it's going to get a regular spot on my watch list.
Mr. Crockett's World!
A friend like you is a friend like me.
Whenever you're in trouble.
Next movie we're going to look at is another straight horror called Daddy's Head, and this movie's available on Shudder. A boy and his stepmother fear for their safety after an eerie creature resembling the boy's recently deceased father visits them. It is directed by Benjamin Barfoot. Okay, so after watching the trailer for Daddy's Head, this looks like a decently creepy creature feature. Now, right off the hop, whatever creature it seems that's imitating the child's father, he honestly just looks and sounds creepy as hell. He's got this super creepy voice. So I actually think we might get some decent creeps and scares out of this one. Now, the acting on the characters seemed decent, and I found that they played fear quite well. Now, I did like the premise for the film, and I thought it had a little air of originality, where the kid's father basically dies, and then some sort of monster is introduced that's imitating him, making the kid think it's his father. So that part actually intrigued me. Now, even though I thought that some of the scares in the film looked cliche, they still seemed pretty effective. Now, it's hard to say a lot about this one because the movie really does look pretty straightforward, but I do think it has some creeps and scares, and it's gonna get a regular spot on my watch list.
You need to say goodbye. He's not going to live.
Goodbye, Daddy.
Next movie we're going to take a look at is a horror mystery thriller called Puzzle Box, and this movie's available on VOD Digital. Drug addict Kate flees to a house in the woods to self-rehabilitate, where her sister Olivia joins to document the process. But the house's layout begins to change, trapping them inside an escapable puzzle box of a house. It is directed by Jack Dignan. Okay, after watching the trailer for Puzzle Box, this looks like a good found footage horror. Now, right off the bat, I'm not sure why, because the premise isn't exactly unique. You have a drug addict who locks themselves away to kick the addiction and weird stuff starts happening, but I really just love that kind of story archetype. I just always find them filled with a decent amount of tension and paranoia. Now, Puzzle Box looks like it packs some really good creeps and scares, and I've got to admit, I even had a little slight bit of anxiety just from watching the trailer. Now, some of the dark scenes and visions for a found footage looked like they were executed perfectly in this trailer, and I could just see a lot of moments where we're going to be sitting on the edge of our seat in anticipation as they do some of these slow pans in the dark, on the dark deck or in a dark hallway. I also like some of the little things that they throw in to show us that this movie's going to have a good element of mystery to it. Now, the characters didn't actually look too bad, even though they're kind of unknowns in a found footage movie. I just hope they don't ruin it by this like long, drawn out introduction of the characters, showing them just doing mundane things. Now, from what I saw in the trailer, the movie actually looked pretty eventful, and the terror actually looked real from the characters, and that's really what I want in a good found footage film. Puzzle Box actually looks like a good found footage, and it'll be getting a little bit of a higher priority on my watch list.
Tell me you heard a scream.
I heard something.
That's not possible.
Next movie we're going to take a look at is a drama horror called Falling Stars, and this movie's available on VOD Digital.
Love you. See you soon.
On the first night of harvest, three brothers set out for the desert to see a witch's corpse. It is directed by Gabrielle Biensazicki and Richard Carpella. So after watching the trailer for Falling Stars, this looks like an interesting folk horror. I really like the premise of this group of friends going out into the woods to dig up a witch and unearthing some sort of curse. Now, the movie looks like it has a really good tone, and it could have some decent creeps and scares. Now, when it came to the characters, the acting, and the production, it did seem a little bit meh, but I mean, it did look competent enough. Now, one thing I thought the trailer did a really good job of doing was kind of building up this little bit of mystery, because we actually don't see any real scenes of the fallout of the unearthed curse, just the buildup of them getting to unearthing it. So it really leaves me with a sense of wondering exactly how this story is going to unfold. I'll be giving Falling Stars a regular spot on my watch list.
No pictures. No touching. You want to make a charm out of one of its fingernails to ward off evil spirits? Don't.
Does it have a broom? We don't want to spoil it, do we?
Why don't you give me a few feet? Wait till I get her out.
Next movie we're going to take a look at is a fantasy horror thriller called Seven Cemeteries, and this one's available on VOD Digital.
Hey, cabrón!
A recent parolee gets a Mexican witch to resurrect his old posse so that they can help him save a woman's ranch from a ruthless drug lord. It is directed by John Gulager. Okay, so after watching the trailer for Seven Cemeteries, this looks like a meh to decent Western action horror. Now, even though it doesn't look like we're going to get any creeps and scares in this one, you might get something decent when it comes to a hard-hitting action horror movie. Now, even though they don't exactly show us direct gore in the trailer, they definitely show us some scenes that are going to lead up to being very gory, and I always find that you do get a good amount of gore and violence when it comes to action horrors. Now, the acting from the characters look kind of meh, but I mean, if you are a fan of Danny Trejo, which is in this movie, I mean, there might be something there for you. But other than that, I did find a lot of the other characters' acting to be a little bit underwhelming. Now, the story and premise did seem a little bit interesting. Now, the story and premise for this one look kind of interesting, where you get Danny Trejo's character fighting some sort of mob lord, and so he gets a witch to resurrect his homies, basically. I don't know how much more to say it, to help him fight the crime boss. Now, I feel like the movie's going to have a little bit of a 300 theme when it comes to this, because it's almost like him and these 7 zombies are going up against this like entire gang of drug dealers. But it looks like the zombies really do kick some ass and they can take tons of punishment. But I have to admit, unfortunately, when it came to some of the acting of the zombies like getting shot and some of the CGI stuff, it did look just a little bit hokey. Now, if you're into that kind of, you know, bad boy action, grindhouse, Danny Trejo type action film, there might be something more interesting in this for you. But for me, I think it's going to get a little bit lower of a spot on my watch list.
You need a new crew.
There's nobody alive crazy enough to stand up to Abuelo.
Alive? Maybe not.
The next movie we're going to take a look at is a horror thriller called Never Let Go, also called Motherland, and this movie is available on VOD Digital. A family that has been haunted by an evil spirit for years. Their safety and their surroundings come into question when one of the children questions if the evil is real. It is directed by Alexandre Aja. Okay, so after watching the trailer for Never Let Go, this looks like an interesting apocalyptic horror. Now, what stuck with me most on this one was the premise. I mean, having to tether yourself to your home in this apocalyptic setting, or somehow you'll be like stolen or taken or killed by some sort of creature, just seemed a little bit interesting and mysterious to me. I mean, honestly, taken by what? And what is really out there? Now, throughout the trailer, we get some glimpses of exactly what it might be, but what we do see of the creatures or beings or whatever it is, the way they move and climb trees, they just really do look good and creepy. Now, with some of the Dark Knight Forest scenes and some of the jump scares we get, I do think that we have a good chance for getting some good scares in this one. Now, the characters in this one look good and well acted, and Halle Berry does a really good job in this movie of just being a super paranoid, unglued mother. Now, I like how they threw a little bit of mystery in this movie with the kids like really questioning if the danger was real in the trailer. But then again, with some of the other scenes, we definitely see what looks like weird creatures, and unless it's paranoia and visions, that kind of just gives up that plot. Never Let Go left just enough in the story and just enough mystery for me to really wonder what's going on and give it a regular spot on my watch list.
One touch without a robot is all it takes.
Next movie we're going to take a look at is a comedy horror thriller called Mother, Father, Sister, Brother, Hank, and it's available on VOD Digital.
This is why Sunday family dinners are so special.
A suburban family plots murder when an uncle crashes Sunday dinner with a nasty surprise. It is directed by Caden Douglas. So after watching the trailer for Mother, Father, this looks like an okay-ish comedy horror. Don't even bother to worry about the creeps and scares in this one, as I'm pretty sure there's not going to be any. Now, I did see some gore for sure, and we saw some really bloody moments, but nothing that's going to be really considered top tier or extreme. Now, the characters and acting seemed alright, but there were a couple moments that the acting from a couple of the characters did seem questionable. Now, even though the premise looked good, unfortunately, it just doesn't even look 1% original for a comedy or a horror. Now, the black sheep of the family coming through in a family event and being a thorn in everybody's side, like I said, it isn't original, but it could be good for some cringe and some good laughs. Just being honest, I feel like this movie is just a little bit too zany for me, and unless I get a viewer recommendation telling me to check it out, I'm afraid I might have to skip this one on my watch list.
Surprise!
Frank.
Jesus, Jerry, with a face like that, people might think you aren't happy to see me.
Well, guys, that's going to do it for another episode of new releases for you to watch and stream. If you did enjoy this content or find a couple of gems to add to your watch list, please leave me a like and subscribe. Now, if I did have to make a couple of picks this week, one of the movies that I'm looking forward to this week definitely is Haunt Season. I just really like the vibe of the movie. I thought there was, again, I'm a big fan of Circle of Friends slashers with all the different personalities and whatnot. And I did think it had a good assortment of kills, a good variety of kills in it. I even saw one part where it's like a girl's arm is getting sawed off. Now, again, I don't know if that's part of them acting for the haunted house. Again, I think it's interesting because in the acting, they're probably going to do a lot of practical gore, just kind of setting up what's in the haunted house, which is why I think this movie could have a lot of gore. I did like the angle of the humor and just like I said, the self-deprecating, we're all failed drama kids doing this. I thought that that was funny and could have some laughs. So that's going to be my first pick of the week. And for my next pick personally, just because I do like a good found footage and I actually thought that this one looked interesting, my next pick is going to be the movie Puzzle Box. I just thought it had a lot of creeps and scares in it. I do like the premise of the drug addict kind of locking herself away. And even just a lot of the scenes, it looked eventful. It looked like that kind of stuff I like to see in a found footage. A lot of slow pans up and down, dark stairs going in the basement. And then just these flitting images where they'll like pan the camera up quickly and you'll just see a figure of something like running towards them or something. It, like I said, even in the trailer, I just got a little bit of anxiety from it. So I think it'll be a really good kind of creepy, scary, tension-filled found footage. Well, guys, that's it for me. I'm going to get out of here as I have got a ton of movies to watch. If you made it this far in the video, I want to thank you so much. I appreciate you. I hope you guys have been well and taking care of yourselves, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.
I'm going to want popcorn for this.